that. So let's start with the Cowboys schedule. Cowboys schedule. I think the toughest stretch of the schedule for the Cowboys is probably going to be that stretch from early on. If you go look at it, they got obviously a lot of big time games, but they have a stretch, a 6 game stretch, but it's a bye in there. It starts with Detroit.
Yeah.
And then they got a bye week right after that. So you can technically say it starts at San Fran, but that Detroit game is still really important how they handle the bye week. Then they're at San Fran, at Atlanta on the road versus Philly, and versus Houston too, in that stretch. So it's really a 5 game stretch there. I think because that Houston game is going to be big for them as well. I think that those 4 straight games there, San Fran, Atlanta, Philly, and Houston. But then I would even throw that Detroit game in there. So 6 weeks, but 5 games. I think that will largely determine a lot of what the Cowboys season. And that's kind of the meat of it. That'll be, to me, the toughest stretch. They got tough games. Everybody's got tough games, but you're looking for tough stretches here. To me, that might be the toughest stretch, Patrick, when you look at it. Detroit bye week, at San Fran, at Atlanta. Remember, that's Kirk Cousins now in Atlanta, so it's a different squad. Versus Philly. I expect Philly to bounce back. Strong draft, strong offseason. Howie Roseman don't stay down for long. They got good players there, and 2 years removed from Super Bowl appearance. And then you got Houston, which is, some people would say they have the best offseason of any team in the NFL, and that, they are maybe 3rd or 4th best team in the AFC. If you start looking at it overall, maybe behind Kansas City, Baltimore, Cincinnati, if you want to throw them out there as a better team than Houston, but not many teams in the AFC are considered better than Houston right now. So I would think, to me, that's a tougher stretch. You gotta, that's it for me, but you might have a tougher stretch. So they got tough games, but that's a tough stretch to me.
Yeah, no, it is. And you throw in the fact that that's 2 premier night games in there too. The San Francisco game's a Sunday night game. The Texans game is a Monday night game. You throw in a couple, a little bit more spotlight in there, when you get to that Texans game. And also that San Francisco coming out of the bye week is probably not where you want San Francisco to be. You'd like to have them before the bye week, because we know San Francisco just beats up teams.
I agree with that.
I know you've had a stat. I'll give you a second to look it up if you don't remember off the top of your head. But that the teams last year, they were just getting the record after you played San Francisco was really, really bad for most teams.
It's like a hangover after.
You get a bye week before, which is great, but you play them on a Sunday night game that week, and it feels like that's one that is just going to be a little bit bigger of a hangover to get over, and it's the start of your second half of your season. So I think that's really kind of where it is you play Detroit, you have to have the right mindset going into your bye week, playing a Detroit team that can scare you, and then coming out of it, you play a San Francisco team, have to try and stay healthy through that. The Falcons also, we mentioned they have Kirk Cousins now. They also have Bijan and Tony Algiers that are going to be able to run the ball. And that's one of those big games where you play San Francisco and the Falcons, and then the Eagles with Saquon Barkley that are all going to run the ball at you. And so you have to, out of that bye week, you better be able to guard the run.
I agree with you. And I didn't keep up with it from last season, and I'll have to go do that and go keep up with it. But from the 2022 season, remember that 2022 season for San Fran?
Yeah.
Every opponent they played went winless after playing San Francisco.
Yeah.
Everybody they played lost the following week after playing San Fran because of the point you made. Yeah, the style of football they play, whether you prevail or lose, it just beats you the hell up, and you're just worn out for that next week. And like I said, I'll go track it for this past year because I want to know too. But for that 2022 season, but it just shows you the style of play, the brand of football.
Yeah.
It's going to take you a while to recover. To your point, you'd rather have that bye week after. Than before.
Yeah, no, and that's especially when you say, how do you start off your second half of the season? You go with probably one of the most physical games we're going to play if you start off after the bye week. But yeah, I think that is the stretch. You luckily do have the bye week between the Lions and San Francisco, so you do have a bye week in that stretch. But for me, I agree with you. That is especially that 4-game stretch. But yeah, I'd throw Detroit in there as well as a piece, and then you just can't let it back off of that. As you get into Washington and the Giants, you don't want to lose one of those. Like, that's really a big piece. You don't want to drop one of those games just because of the stretch you just went through, because I think they can finish the season pretty strong Really at the end of the
I agree.
season, they have the Bengals, they have the Eagles, but you should be able to beat the Commanders. They play them twice at the end. You should be able to beat the Giants. The Panthers are in there. The Buccaneers, we know they had a resurgent last year, but they now lose an offensive coordinator in Canales that we know did a lot for them. I don't know if they got better in the offseason necessarily. I don't think they got worse, but I don't know how much better they got. So that's the one that you should be able to win as well. So a lot of games you should be able to win, and Cincinnati and Philadelphia are winnable games as well, just depending on how those teams are and where your health is. You can finish the season really strong if you're the Cowboys. So it's getting through that stretch and then not dropping one of those because of the stretch just right after between Washington and the Giants.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I think that's I think it's week 6 if I'm not mistaken that starts with that Detroit
Yes.
game. And yeah, so and like I said, the tough games, you start with Cleveland at Cleveland. That's a tough game. You're probably gonna have a rookie left tackle, and he's gonna be going up against the best defensive player in the
Myles
league,
Garrett,
arguably, in Myles Garrett. So that's something you got to deal with. That's a tough game, and that defense for the Browns is legit. And one day, maybe, and if it does happen, it's gonna make. I mean, that division is already tough enough, but it's gonna make everybody's life in the NFL just absolutely hell if Deshaun Watson actually returns to form.
Yeah.
It hadn't happened. We know we're Texans fans, so we remember Deshaun Watson when he was playing like a top 5 quarterback in the league. And that was in spite of all the things that the roster was lacking with the Texans. He was putting that team on his back and putting the cape on Sundays and was playing like a top 5 quarterback. He has not returned to that form because of, obviously a lot of distractions off the field and off the field issues. And the Browns, they paid all that money, fully guaranteed deal, because they're hoping he returns to form, and they stack that roster around him. If he does, man, the problems that could arise for everybody who has to play the Browns, if that is the case, because that roster is loaded. So that is that's a game, a big game. You got Baltimore in week 3. Of course, that's a big game. So they got tough games. But then, like I said, in between those, you got the Saints in between the Browns and the Ravens game. You got the Giants and the Steelers. Who knows how good the Steelers are going to be? Russell Wilson, Justin Fields, nobody really knows.
Coaches. Arthur Smith's going to be there.
Yes, the offensive coordinator. The Giants. Nobody expects the Giants to be really good. And the Cowboys have done really well in that division. Dak pretty much owns that division since he's been there. Like I said, that tough stretch, it starts with the Lions, and then that week 6, and then at San Fran, at Atlanta, then Philly, then Houston. And then I'm going to say you get a breather with Washington, but you got a better team, and you're a better roster overall than Washington. They will have, of course, Dan Quinn, who knows your roster really well, and he has a lot of guys who are former Cowboys. So if you want to throw that game in there too, just because of the kind of revenge factor that'll be in there, and the familiarity, and the kind of in the incestuous off season that basically those two organizations have had, because Dan Quinn went from the Cowboys to the Washington Commanders. You can throw that in there too as a tough game, just because of how taxing it's going to be emotionally for everybody involved. And Dan Quinn might have something up his sleeve.
Yeah, and
he knows that team really well.
And all these games, anytime you play against a rookie quarterback, you just don't know what Jaden Daniels is going to be yet. Because, it depends. If Jaden Daniels has a season like C.J. Stroud did, then that's a hard game. And if he has a season like Bryce Young had, then it's not a bad game. That should be a winnable game. So, you never really know in those situations. I will throw out for when we talk about week 1 with the Browns. The reports are that Nick Chubb is probably going to miss some time to start the season, still coming back from injury.
Okay.
So that is a plus for you early in the season, is that Nick Chubb will probably be out of that game. But you're still going up against a really, really good defense to begin the season, and you're going to have to throw the ball a lot probably early, because you're going to have Zeke and Pollard, and unless you get another running back, that's going to be tough sledding against a team that's just going to blitz you a lot, knowing you're not going to run the ball a ton. But I'm with you. And then I'll throw in week 13, the Giants. That's a Thursday night game. That's when you say lose one of those games after you kind of that rough stretch. The reason the Giants game gets a little bit more complicated is because it's the Thursday night game, and anything can happen in Thursday night games. They're historically pretty bad games. I know they've tried to make them better, but either they're complete shootouts or they're terrible scoring. You just don't see a lot of great Thursday night games. So it's one where maybe if you get stuck in it's a defensive battle and they just get lucky late. You don't want to get stuck in, looking past that team as you're going to play the Bengals on Monday night the next week. You don't want to get caught looking bad saying, well, we got through our tough stretch. We're good to go. We got Bengals coming up on Monday. But other than that, you should be able to win both those games pretty easily.
Yeah, at least you get a little bit of that. And that's a great point. So off of that that emotional Washington game, because of the familiarity between the coaches and the squads, you're going to have a short week when you're playing the Giants coming off the road, playing Washington.
Yeah.
For that Thursday night game. So kind of throw that in there too. It'll be a short week coming off of that really emotional game. And at least you got extra time to prepare and rest up for the Bengals, which is, like you said, another big game. It's going to be a Monday night game. That's a prime timer for you. So, yeah, I mean, that stretch, once again, adding to it even more, I'll throw in there short week to play the Giants.
Yeah.
That's a short week to play the Giants on the last game of that stretch. So now we've added a 6 game. It's a 7-game stretch essentially, just because I think you'll add that short week. That's always a pain, and you don't really get much time to practice. And
in reality, it's 2 short weeks because you play week 11 on a Monday night. So you play week 11 on a Monday night, week 12 on a Sunday, week 13 on a Thursday. So you're technically in 2 short weeks in a row.
Yeah. No, the NFL, they do that to a lot of teams. There are probably half the teams in the league that are going to get just essentially shafted like that.
Yeah, and then but the good news is week 13
and the Cowboys are always one of those, so they're always on prime time. They want them on prime time a lot. So Jerry's like, I don't give a damn. Just put us on prime time.
And you get all those days back when you go week 13 to 14. You get them all back.
But no, you're right. That's a great point. You end up having a lot of those short weeks. You end up, with a lot of short weeks there in that stretch. So yeah, that's the tough stretch for you Cowboys fans. That's it. I think that 7 games basically in the way we broke it down there, I believe that's going to determine largely the season and reveal what kind of team the Cowboys are, if they're a championship team or a team that did get better, right? We don't really know that the Cowboys got better this offseason. Most Cowboys fans are reluctant to believe the Cowboys improved this offseason, a dramatic improvement. But that stretch, I think, will tell us everything we need to know. All right, let's talk about the Texans. Oh, and by the way, 6 of the final 9 games for the Cowboys at home. That's actually pretty good. All right, let's talk about the Texans, because they also had tough games. But here's the tough stretch for me, Patrick. It is, and you know what? I mean, they got a lot of really, I think, tough games just because now the NFL wants to feature the Texans. By the way, shout out to the Texans who have 6 primetime games, by the way.
Hey,
so
we're not an 11 a.m. team all the time now.
Exactly. Yeah, you go for a team that was playing from 11 a.m. So it's got 1 p.m. slot. I believe most of their games were there. They didn't have any games outside of that slot except for one. I believe they had one game outside that